2 young men are dead. Their deaths were horrible, terrifying.
It begins with silence, the kind of silence that only comes after something terrible has already happened. A broken toy, a family photo face down on the floor, the faint echo of a voice that will never answer again. When we think of evil, we imagine monsters. We imagine faces hardened by years of hatred, eyes that have long forgotten softness. We do not imagine children, but sometimes the darkness does not wait to grow up. Sometimes it is born alongside innocence, learning to smile, to laugh, to pretend. Across the world, there are stories that make us question what it truly means to be human. Crimes committed not by strangers in the night, but by sons and daughters, classmates and friends. Children who should have been too young to understand death, yet somehow understood it completely. They planned, they calculated, they killed. Psychologists call it moral blindness, the ability to know what is wrong and do it anyway. For some, it began with jealousy. For others, with anger, rejection, or curiosity. But for all of them, the moment came when empathy simply vanished. Technology now exposes every secret, every camera, every message, every chilling confession. We no longer have to imagine what evil looks like when it is young. We can see it, frame by frame. These are not horror stories from the past. They are real, recent, and unforgettable. Each one a reminder that innocence can twist into something unrecognizable, that sometimes the most frightening monsters are the ones still learning how to grow up. These are the most evil killer kids of all times. And it all begins with one boy, a child genius, a manipulator, and a murderer. His name was Paris Bennett. He was 13 years old when he decided that his little sister had to die. Paris Bennett, Texas, United States, 2007. In the small town of Abilene, Texas, the Bennett family seemed ordinary. A mother, a son, and a little girl who loved cartoons and bedtime stories. Their house was quiet, comfortable, and filled with warmth. Until one February night when 13-year-old Paris Bennett decided to destroy it all. Not out of rage, not out of confusion, but out of calculation. Paris was gifted. His IQ was said to be higher than 170. He read philosophy before he was 10. He played chess, spoke eloquently, and could charm adults with ease. He was the kind of child people called brilliant, but behind the intelligence, something darker was growing. His mother, Charity Lee, had raised him alone after his father left. She adored him, and she adored his little sister, Ella, a bright 4-year-old who followed Paris everywhere. To outsiders, they looked like a close, loving family, but inside Paris, jealousy burned quietly. Jealousy for the attention his mother gave Ella, and resentment for the life he no longer controlled. On the night of February 5th, 2007, Charity went to work at a nearby restaurant. Paris stayed home with Ella and their babysitter. Everything seemed normal. He laughed, watched television, and told the babysitter she could go home early. Once the house was quiet, he made a phone call. Not for help, but to set the stage. At 1:30 in the morning, Paris dialed 911. His voice was calm. He told the operator his sister was hurt, that someone had broken in. When police arrived, they found Ella in her bed, stabbed 17 times. She had fought back, tiny hands covered in blood. Paris was standing nearby, covered too, not with tears, but with precision. He confessed almost immediately. He said he had waited until his sister was asleep. He said he had taken a kitchen knife and walked into her room. He said he wanted to see what it felt like. When detectives asked him why, his answer was chilling. He said he wanted to punish his mother. He said killing Ella was the worst thing he could do to her, and that was exactly why he did it. There was no psychotic break, no fit of rage, just logic, cold, methodical, and cruel. At his trial, psychologists described Paris as highly intelligent but emotionally detached. He understood right from wrong completely. He simply did not care. When asked if he felt remorse, he paused, smiled slightly, and said he felt regret for the consequences, not for the act itself. His mother, Charity, visited him in juvenile detention. She wanted answers, closure, maybe even forgiveness. What she found instead was indifference. Paris told her he had fantasized about killing since childhood. That night, he said, he had simply decided to act on it. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison, the maximum allowed for a minor in Texas. He will be eligible for parole in his early 50s. Until then, he spends his life in confinement, reading philosophy and writing letters to journalists. He remains articulate, composed, and terrifyingly aware of what he did. In the years since the murder, Charity Lee has spoken publicly about her son. She founded a nonprofit to help victims of violent crime. She visits Paris in prison, still calling him her child, though she admits she fears him deeply. In interviews, she has said, "I love my son, but I know what he is." The story of Paris Bennett is not one of madness. It is one of intellect without empathy, a reminder that intelligence does not protect us from evil. It can sharpen it. The documentary The Family I Had captured their relationship years later. It shows Paris, now older, still calm, still calculating, speaking about the night he murdered his sister, as though recounting a school project. No emotion, no hesitation, only control. When asked if he would have done it differently, he said no. He said he had already achieved what he wanted, to take away the one person his mother loved most. Even now, he writes her letters from prison, filled with riddles, philosophy, and half-apologies that never feel real. For Charity, every visit is a battle between love and fear, hope, and horror. She once said, "He is both my son and my tormentor. I live in a world where both are true." Paris Bennett remains one of the youngest and most chilling killers in modern history. Not because of how he killed, but because of why. He did not snap. He decided. And he executed his plan with the precision of someone far older than 13. When the police asked him what he thought as his sister died, he replied quietly, "I knew she was gone. I knew I had done what I came to do." It is a story that forces us to question everything we believe about innocence. Because if a child can understand love and still choose hate, then perhaps evil does not wait for adulthood at all. And as one family in Texas buried their daughter, another across the country would soon face a nightmare of their own. A teenage boy in Utah, quiet and polite, would walk into his home one afternoon and open fire on the people who loved him most. Colin Jeffrey, Toole County, Utah, United States, 2020. Some killers are shaped by chaos. Others are born into peace and destroy it anyway. In a small town in Toole County, Utah, the Haynie family lived quietly, far from the noise of city life. They were close, faithful, and kind. A father named Albert, a mother named Diane, and their children, Colin, Alexis, Matthew, and Milan. They went to church every Sunday. They ate dinner together every night. It was a home built on love. Until one afternoon, when 16-year-old Colin Jeffrey Haynie decided that love no longer mattered. It happened on January 17th, 2020. The day began like any other. Colin's mother, Diane, was cleaning the house. His younger siblings were finishing homework and laughing in the kitchen. Colin sat in his room, quiet, distant, and calm. The kind of calm that hides a storm. He had been planning this for weeks. No fights, no warnings. Just a quiet decision to end the people who raised him. Later, prosecutors would say they found no motive, no rage, no trigger, only intent. Around 4 in the afternoon, when his mother walked through the door, Colin pulled out a handgun. He shot her once in the head, then he waited. When his sister Alexis, aged 12, came home next, he killed her too. Moments later, his brothers Matthew, aged 14, and Milan, aged 15, arrived. He shot them both as they stepped inside. Each death was methodical, each one planned. When the police later asked him why, he said simply, "I wanted to kill everyone in the house." But his plan did not go perfectly. His father, Albert, was still at work. Colin waited, gun ready, for his return. He had already reloaded. He had already rehearsed. But Albert never came home. Instead, he called his wife, and when no one answered, he grew suspicious and asked a neighbor to check. When the police arrived, they found Colin sitting in the living room, covered in blood. He did not run, he did not cry. He just looked up and said, "I know what I did." Officers' body cameras captured the scene. The boy's blank stare, the silence in the room, the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut. There was no struggle. He even told officers where to find the gun. The murder weapon still sat on the table, as if waiting to be used again. At first, investigators believed there must have been abuse, trauma, something that could explain it, but there was nothing. No drugs, no fights, no mental breakdown. just a 16-year-old who decided one day to erase his family from existence. In interviews, friends described Colin as quiet but polite, a little distant, yes, but never angry. One teacher said he was smart and respectful. Another said he seemed lonely. No one imagined he was capable of such horror. The surviving member of the family, Albert Haynie, later told the court that he forgave his son. He said, "He took everything from me, but I cannot carry hate forever." His words broke the silence of the courtroom, but not the hearts that sat inside it. Colin showed no emotion as the evidence was read. Photos, videos, and the timeline of that afternoon played out minute by minute. He listened, blinked, and stared forward. When asked if he wanted to speak, he simply said, "No." The judge called the crime a massacre born from emptiness. There was no reason to understand, only horror to remember. In 2021, Colin pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of attempted murder for the plan to kill his father. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. As the verdict was read, he did not react. Not even when his father began to cry. Inside prison, he rarely speaks. Reports describe him as calm, quiet, and detached, the same boy he was before the murders, only older now, with nothing left to lose. The case of Colin Haynie left Utah stunned. A state built on family values, faith, and community could not comprehend how one of its own had destroyed those very things so completely. No one saw it coming. No one will forget it. 4 lives gone in minutes. A father left alone in a house that would never feel like home again. And a boy who had everything: love, stability, and opportunity, but still chose death. Some killers are driven by pain. Colin's motive was far more terrifying. There was none. Just curiosity, just control, just the quiet satisfaction of deciding who gets to live and who does not. In his mind, the murders were not evil, they were logical. The act of a boy who saw his family not as people, but as pieces of a puzzle he no longer wanted to keep. He once told a psychiatrist, "I wondered what it would be like if everyone was gone. Now I know." It is a sentence that lingers, heavy and hollow, like the sound of a door closing for the last time. And while the world was still trying to understand how a teenager could kill 4 people without a reason, another boy in Florida would show that sometimes motive is even darker. Not confusion, but obsession. A 14-year-old with a knife, a classmate who never saw it coming. Aiden Sean Fucci, St. Johns County, Florida, United States, 2021. It began as an ordinary Sunday morning in St. Johns County, Florida. Quiet streets, open skies, and a town where nothing truly bad was supposed to happen. But by the end of that day, the world would know the name of Aiden Sean Fucci, a 14-year-old boy whose crime would shake the nation and stain an entire community with horror. His victim was Tristan Bailey, a 13-year-old cheerleader, full of energy, ambition, and kindness. Everyone who knew her described her as radiant, the kind of girl who made others feel lighter just by being near her. She had plans, dreams, and a family that adored her. And on that night, she crossed paths with someone who wanted to destroy all of it. In the early hours of May 9th, 2021, Tristan and Aiden were seen walking together in their neighborhood. Security cameras captured them at 1:12 in the morning, laughing, unaware that the next moment would be her last. By 6 a.m., Tristan's family realized she was missing. A search began immediately. Neighbors joined police combing through the fields, ponds, and woods. Just hours later, a jogger discovered her body in a wooded area less than half a mile from her home. She had been stabbed 114 times. When investigators traced her final moments, all paths led back to Aiden Fucci. He was one of her classmates, charming, confident, and known for his dark jokes. At first, he denied everything. He told police he had walked her partway home and left. But evidence was already waiting. Blood on his shoes, a knife missing from his house, and the security footage that showed them walking together, but never showed Tristan coming back. Within hours, he was arrested. Inside the patrol car, he took out his phone, opened Snapchat, and took a selfie. He smiled slightly and captioned it, "Hey guys, has anyone seen Tristan lately?" That single image would define him forever. The smirk of a killer who still thought it was a game. When investigators searched his home, they found more than evidence. They found notebooks filled with sketches of knives and violent fantasies, Friends came forward saying he often bragged about wanting to kill someone just to see how it feels. He had told classmates he planned to take a life before his 15th birthday. He kept his promise. The autopsy revealed Tristan had fought hard. Defensive wounds covered her hands and arms, but the attack was relentless, a storm of rage from someone she thought she could trust. When prosecutors described the crime, they said it showed pure evil: 114 stab wounds, 49 to the hands, arms, and head, 35 to the back, each one deliberate, each one proof of intent. Aiden's mother, Crystal Smith, was later charged as well, after security footage showed her washing her son's blood-stained jeans in the sink. It was a desperate attempt to protect him. It failed. During interrogation, Aiden changed his story several times. He smiled, joked, and asked if Tristan was found yet. When detectives told him she was dead, he showed no reaction. Not sadness, not shock, just silence. In court, prosecutors played the Snapchat video for the jury. The casual cruelty of a teenager posing for attention while his victim lay dead in the woods. It was not just murder, it was arrogance. When the verdict came on March 24, 2023, Aiden Fucci was sentenced to life in prison. He turned 16 that year. He showed no emotion as the sentence was read. The judge told him, "You are beyond rehabilitation. You are not a child. You are a killer." In his final statement, Aiden apologized to Tristan's family, but his words felt empty, mechanical, rehearsed. For the Baileys, it was far too late. Their daughter was gone, and the boy who took her life would grow old behind bars. Even now, his mugshot circulates online, a teenager with messy hair and hollow eyes. He is no longer the boy from the hallways of Patriot Oaks Academy. He is a symbol of something far darker. What happens when youth and violence collide in a world where empathy no longer seems to exist? Tristan Bailey's friends created memorials in her name, ribbons, candles, and cheer bows tied to trees across the community. Every one of them carried her favorite color, teal. Every one of them a reminder of how quickly innocence can be taken. The story of Aiden Fucci is not only about murder, it is about what happens when ego replaces humanity. A generation raised in front of cameras, desperate to be seen, even in their worst moments. For Aiden, fame came not from achievement, but from atrocity. And while he spends the rest of his life in prison, his selfie remains frozen in time, the smile of a boy who wanted attention and found it in the darkest way imaginable. And while Florida mourned a girl whose kindness was her only crime, another young killer across the ocean would strike for reasons just as senseless. A boy barely 14, obsessed with online arguments, would lure a 12-year-old girl into the night and end her life over a few cruel words typed on a screen. Harry Gilbertson, Liverpool, United Kingdom, 2021. In the city of Liverpool, the streets hum with life even after dark. Laughter spills from pubs, buses pass under flickering streetlights, and for most people, danger feels distant, something that happens somewhere else. But on one night in March of 2021, that illusion shattered. A 12-year-old girl would never make it home, and her killer would turn out to be another child. His name was Harry Gilbertson, 14 years old. Tall for his age, quiet in class, and known mostly for his temper online. He had grown up surrounded by technology, living more through screens than through real conversation. Most of his friendships existed in text messages, arguments, and group chats. And like so many modern tragedies, this one began with words. The victim was Leah Davies, a 12-year-old who attended the same school. She was kind, creative, and funny in a way that made people feel safe around her. But in the endless cycle of teenage drama, one rumor, one insult can turn a friend into an enemy. In the days before her death, messages between Harry and Leah filled with anger. An argument that began online spilled into real life. He told her to meet him near a park that night. She agreed, unaware that he was carrying a knife. CCTV cameras later showed Leah walking alone, her hood pulled tight against the cold. Harry was already waiting, pacing back and forth near the swings. The two argued for several minutes. Witnesses nearby heard shouting, then silence. Seconds later, Leah fell to the ground, one stab wound, straight to the chest. By the time help arrived, she was gone. Harry ran, but not far. Police arrested him less than an hour later, hiding behind a row of bins near his home. His hands were shaking. Blood covered his sleeve. When questioned, he said he had not meant to kill her. He said he just wanted to scare her. But detectives found messages on his phone that told a different story. Threats, taunts, and one final message sent only minutes before the attack. It read, "You'll see what happens." In court, prosecutors showed the CCTV footage of the two meeting, pausing it at the final frame before the attack. The image froze time, Leah looking up, Harry stepping forward. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to haunt everyone in the room. Psychologists described Harry as emotionally underdeveloped, impulsive, and angry, but fully aware of his actions. He had planned the meeting. He had brought the knife. He had chosen to use it. That was all the jury needed to hear. During the trial, Leah's parents sat in silence. They had lost their daughter to an argument that should have ended with tears, not blood. Her mother said, "We taught her that people make mistakes. We never imagined hers would cost her life." When the verdict came, the courtroom fell still. Harry Gilbertson was found guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 13 years. For a boy who had just turned 15, it meant adulthood would come behind bars. Reporters described his reaction as emotionless. He stood straight, hands folded, as though he did not understand what he had done. But maybe he did. Maybe he understood it too well. In the months that followed, the case became a painful reflection of a new kind of violence, one born in the digital age. Arguments that used to end with silence now continue endlessly online, where humiliation lives forever. And for someone like Harry, trapped in that world, violence felt like control. Leah's classmates created a memorial at the park where she died. Flowers, drawings, and notes tied to the swing set. One message read, "You were too good for this world." Another said, "We'll never walk home the same way again." Harry's own friends said they barely recognized the boy who had done it. Some still refused to believe he was capable. Others said he had always seemed different, detached, unpredictable. But whatever he had been before, that night defined him forever. In prison, Harry reportedly keeps to himself. He reads, writes letters to no one, and avoids questions about Leah. The few words he has spoken publicly show no emotion, no remorse, only the same cold distance he showed that night. For investigators, his case remains one of the clearest examples of how quickly anger can turn to murder when empathy disappears. One rumor, one insult, one knife. That is all it takes. Leah Davies' family still visits the park each year, leaving flowers beneath the same swing where she was last seen alive. And each time, they ask the same question the world keeps asking. Why? Some answers never come, only silence does. And while Liverpool was mourning the death of a child killed over a message, across the ocean, another teenager would turn a car into a weapon. Not a spontaneous act, but a deliberate decision to destroy everything. Proof that evil doesn't always carry a knife. Sometimes, it presses the accelerator. Mackenzie Shirilla, Strongsville, Ohio, United States, 2022. Strongsville, Ohio, was the kind of place where nothing terrible ever seemed to happen. A quiet town of tree-lined streets, small coffee shops, and teenagers who spent warm nights driving nowhere in particular. It was the kind of place where tragedy felt distant, like something that belonged to another world. Until one early morning, when 17-year-old Mackenzie Shirilla decided to end two lives and destroy her own. The date was July 31st, 2022. Mackenzie was behind the wheel of her Toyota Camry, driving through the sleeping streets. Her passengers were Dominic Russo, age 20, and Davion Flanagan, age 19. They were friends, and for a while that night, everything had seemed normal. Music, laughter, plans. Then, in an instant, everything changed. At 5:30 in the morning, cameras from nearby businesses caught the Camry turning onto Alameda Drive. It was a dead-end road lined with warehouses, silent at that hour. At first, the car moved at an ordinary speed. Then it began to accelerate, 50 miles per hour, 70, 90, 100. There were no brake lights, no attempt to slow down. The car stayed perfectly straight, and then, in one deafening instant, it hit the wall. Metal twisted, glass exploded, and silence swallowed everything. When first responders arrived, smoke filled the air. Dominic and Davion were dead at the scene. Mackenzie was unconscious, but alive. To police, it looked like a tragic accident, a teenager driving too fast, a mistake with fatal consequences. But then they began to look closer. There were no skid marks on the pavement. The car's black box data revealed full acceleration in the seconds before the crash. The steering wheel had not moved even once, and the impact point was exact, the center of the wall, as if the car had been aimed. When Mackenzie regained consciousness in the hospital, she claimed to remember nothing. She said she might have fallen asleep, but her phone told another story. Text messages showed a fight with Dominic the night before. Witnesses said they argued at a party, her voice shaking with anger. She had left early, furious. One message read, "You're going to regret this." Investigators replayed the security footage over and over. The evidence was undeniable. There was no panic in that final moment, no confusion, only control. In the weeks that followed, police uncovered more. A friend told detectives Mackenzie had been jealous, controlling, and obsessed with Dominic. She had threatened to crash the car before if he tried to leave her. No one took her seriously, until she did it. In August of 2023, Mackenzie Shirilla stood trial for 2 counts of murder. Her defense argued it was an accident caused by fatigue, but prosecutors called it premeditated. A relationship turned into a weapon. They played the crash footage in court. The sound of the engine filled the room. The screen showed the headlights growing brighter until everything turned white. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. The prosecutor's voice broke that silence. She controlled the wheel. She controlled the speed. She controlled who lived and who died. Mackenzie cried as the verdict was read, guilty on all charges. The judge sentenced her to 15 years to life. She whispered through tears, "I didn't mean to," but the evidence had already made her meaning clear. Dominic's mother stood outside the courthouse after sentencing. Her words were quiet but heavy. "She took my son, and then she smiled in her photos like nothing happened." Those photos still circulate, the perfect teenage life, filtered and fake. The contrast between those smiles and the wreckage that followed became impossible to ignore. Strongsville changed after that morning. The crash site became a shrine. People left flowers, notes, and teal candles for the boys. Someone painted their initials on the wall, a reminder that no one should ever die like that. Every local driver who passes that corner slows down, if only for a second, because the memory lives there. Inside prison, Mackenzie's world is smaller now. Her social media fame has faded to silence. No cameras, no filters, no control. Other inmates call her the girl driver. She spends most days alone, writing letters she never sends. In one, she wrote, "I don't remember the crash, but I dream about it every night." Psychologists called her crime a moment of emotional annihilation. No psychosis, no insanity, just pure intent. A teenager who turned heartbreak into homicide. For Dominic and Davion's families, there will never be enough justice. 2 young men full of promise gone because of one impulsive act of rage. Their names became a rallying cry for awareness about toxic relationships and teen violence. Schools in the area began programs teaching emotional regulation and safe driving. But change, as always, came too late for them. Every second of that crash remains online. The proof of what happens when love becomes control and when control becomes destruction. It plays like a nightmare that refuses to fade, because the car did not lose control. It never had it. The story of Mackenzie Shirilla is not about speed, it is about intent. The quiet, deliberate decision to turn a car into a coffin, and to press the pedal down until there was nothing left but silence. And while Ohio was still trying to comprehend the wreckage left behind by a girl who killed for control, across the sea in England, another pair of teenagers would commit a murder just as cold, not in the heat of rage, but through a plan, written in messages, rehearsed like a game, and carried out with precision. Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, Warrington, United Kingdom 2. 2023, in Warrington, a quiet town in the north of England, 2 15-year-olds turned fantasy into murder, not in a moment of rage, but after weeks of careful rehearsal. Their names were Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe. To the world, they looked like ordinary teenagers, quiet, artistic, and withdrawn. They attended the same school, shared the same friends, and soon shared something darker, a fascination with killing. The victim was Brianna Gay, a 16-year-old who trusted them both. She was kind, open, and full of life. She dreamed of becoming a performer and often shared her thoughts online. never imagining that the people reading them were planning her death. Scarlett and Eddie had been friends for over a year. Both came from stable homes. Both were intelligent and curious. But beneath their calm exteriors, something was growing. Scarlett had an obsession with true crime. She watched documentaries about serial killers, read online forums, and wrote in her journal about how it might feel to take a life. Eddie, quiet and impressionable, became her mirror. Together, they fed each other's darkness. It began as a game, hypothetical conversations, what-if scenarios, and jokes that stopped being jokes. Then they began to plan. They wrote down possible weapons, locations, and methods. Messages recovered from their phones showed chilling detail. Scarlett wrote, "We should do it soon. I want to see what it's like." Eddie replied, "I'll bring the knife." On February 11th, 2023, they set the plan in motion. They invited Brianna to meet them in Colcheth Linear Park, a place the three often visited. It was quiet, surrounded by trees and walking paths, perfect for what they intended. Brianna agreed. She trusted them. They walked together for nearly an hour, talking, laughing, appearing like ordinary friends. Then Scarlett gave the signal. Eddie took out the knife. What followed was brutal and fast. Brianna was stabbed 28 times. She never had a chance to scream for help. When it was over, Scarlett and Eddie walked away calmly, leaving her body under the trees. CCTV footage later showed them exiting the park, chatting and smiling as if nothing had happened. They went home, they messaged friends, they cleaned their clothes, and they waited for the world to find out. When Brianna's body was discovered later that day, police quickly traced her last messages to Scarlett and Eddie. Within 24 hours, they were arrested. At first, both denied involvement, but their phones betrayed them. The chat logs, the searches, the rehearsal notes. They had even discussed how they would feel afterward. Scarlett had written, "We'll be famous. People will talk about us." In interrogation, Scarlett remained composed. Her voice was soft, emotionless, almost polite. Eddie cried, insisting he never meant for it to go so far. But when police confronted them with evidence, the truth became undeniable. They had planned every detail. Together. In court, prosecutors described them as partners in cruelty. They presented drawings, notes, and videos showing their fascination with violence. They watched horror films, read about serial killers, and treated the idea of murder like a science project. One entry from Scarlett's notebook read, "Killing someone is the ultimate test of control." Another said, "No empathy, no fear." Brianna's parents sat through every word. They listened as strangers dissected the final hours of their daughter's life. The courtroom was silent when photos of the crime scene were shown. Her mother later said, "I saw the world end in that moment." Psychologists who evaluated Scarlett and Eddie described their friendship as toxic symbiosis, two personalities that amplified each other's worst instincts. Separately, they might never have killed. Together, they became capable of anything. In July of 2024, both were found guilty of murder. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, with minimum terms of 22 years for Scarlett and 20 years for Eddie. They will be in their late 30s before they are even considered for release. Neither showed emotion when the sentences were read. Scarlett stared ahead, her hands folded neatly. Eddie looked down, crying quietly, though no one could tell if it was from regret or fear. The judge called their crime an act of pure evil, executed with chilling precision. After the verdict, investigators revealed that Scarlett had told classmates weeks earlier that she wanted to kill someone for fun. No one believed her. They laughed it off. Now, those same classmates live with the weight of what they dismissed. The case of Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe became one of the most disturbing in modern British history, a reminder that even the young can harbor the darkest thoughts, and that sometimes evil is not born, but built through connection. In Warrington, Boston, a bench now stands in Brianna's memory. Flowers are replaced weekly. Strangers stop to read her name, whisper her story, and move on, quieter than before. For Scarlett and Eddie, their partnership ended the moment their plan succeeded. They will grow old apart, confined by walls instead of whispers, but their story remains together, a lesson in how quickly fascination can become fixation, and how two children turned friendship into murder. And while England was reeling from the murder planned by two 15-year-olds, another teenager would soon commit a crime driven by something far more personal: In a small town called Hexham, a 16-year-old boy would take the life of his former girlfriend. A murder born, not from fantasy, but heartbreak. Logan MacPhail, Hexham, United Kingdom, 2023. Some murders are born from rage, others are born from heartbreak. But heartbreak, when mixed with obsession, can become something far worse. Hexham, a quiet market town in Northumberland, sits surrounded by hills and stone cottages. It is the kind of place where everyone knows each other, where small dramas play out in whispers, and life feels safe. That illusion shattered in March of 2023, when 16-year-old Logan MacPhail killed his 15-year-old ex-girlfriend, Holly Newton, in an alleyway behind the high street. They had once been inseparable, two teenagers caught up in first love. They met at school, bonded over music and long walks, and for a time, they were happy. But as months passed, their relationship turned volatile. Logan was controlling, jealous, and unpredictable. Friends said he texted her constantly, demanded to know where she was, and grew angry whenever she spoke to other boys. When Holly ended the relationship, Logan refused to accept it. He sent her messages begging her to come back. When she ignored him, his words turned darker. One message read, "If I can't have you, no one will." At first, she brushed it off as teenage drama, but she began to grow afraid. In the days before her death, Holly told friends she felt watched. She said Logan followed her after school, waiting near the bus stop. Her parents urged her to tell the police, but she insisted she could handle it. She was wrong. On the afternoon of February 27th, 2023, Logan left his house carrying a kitchen knife. He walked nearly 2 miles through the town center, his hood up, his pace steady. CCTV cameras tracked every step. At 3:40 p.m., he saw Holly walking with a friend near the shops. He followed them into an alleyway. Moments later, screams echoed through the street. Witnesses saw Holly collapse, clutching her stomach. Her friend ran for help. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Holly had been stabbed multiple times. Logan ran, but not far. Police arrested him minutes later, hiding near the riverbank, covered in her blood. When officers asked why he did it, his answer was quiet. "She didn't love me anymore," he said. "I couldn't stand it." In court, prosecutors described the killing as an act of control, not passion. Logan had planned it. He carried the knife for days, waiting for the right moment. His phone revealed searches like, "What happens if you kill someone?" and "How long do you go to prison for stabbing?" He knew what he was about to do. He just did not care. At the trial, Holly's family sat together, their faces pale with disbelief. Her mother held a photo of her daughter smiling, the same smile now printed on posters across the town. When the CCTV footage played, she left the courtroom in tears. Logan sat still, head bowed. He did not look at anyone. He showed no emotion as the prosecution detailed every wound, every moment of the attack. The knife had pierced Holly's heart. The doctor said she likely died within seconds. Psychologists who examined Logan called him emotionally immature but fully aware. He was not insane, they said. He was obsessed. He viewed Holly as something he owned, a person turned possession, and when that possession rejected him, he destroyed it. In September of 2023, Logan was found guilty of murder. The judge described him as a danger to anyone who dares to reject him. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum of 17 years before possible release. When the verdict was read, Holly's father spoke softly to reporters outside. "She was only 15, he said. She had her whole life ahead of her. He took that for nothing." The community of Hexham gathered in silence days later. Hundreds filled the town square for a candlelight vigil. Her classmates brought flowers and letters. One note read, "We love you, Holly. You deserved better." The town's church bells rang 15 times, once for each year of her life. Logan MacPhail will spend most of his life in prison. He was 16 when he killed her. He will be in his 30s before he has the chance to walk free again. Whether he feels remorse remains unclear. Inside, guards describe him as polite but distant, never speaking about Holly, never speaking about love, just silence. His story is a reminder that obsession can masquerade as affection, that what looks like love can be control wearing a disguise, and that sometimes the most dangerous words a young person can say are, "I can't live without you." The murder of Holly Newton shook the United Kingdom because it did not come from evil in the traditional sense. It came from something heartbreakingly familiar. Teenage emotion twisted into violence. Her death became a warning for every parent and teacher who missed the signs, every friend who thought it was just drama. Because in the quiet corners of small towns, heartbreak can still kill. And as Hexam tried to heal, only months later, another teenager in England would repeat the horror, this time in Croydon. A 17-year-old boy, driven not by jealousy but by rage, would attack a 15-year-old girl in broad daylight, surrounded by witnesses who could not stop him in time. Hassan Sentamu, Croydon, United Kingdom, 2023. It was an ordinary school morning in Croydon, South London. The streets were crowded, buses lined the road, and children filled the pavements in their uniforms. It was the kind of morning that felt safe, predictable, until one boy's rage turned the routine into horror. The date was September 27th, 2023. The girl's name was Eliane Ndam. She was 15 years old, full of life, and known for her bright smile and kindness. That morning, she left home for school, chatting with friends at the bus stop near Wellesley Road. Among the crowd was a boy she once knew, Hassan Sentamu, age 17. He had a knife hidden in his sleeve and anger boiling in his chest. Witnesses would later recall how ordinary he looked. A hooded sweatshirt, earphones, a backpack slung over one shoulder. No one suspected that within minutes, he would change countless lives forever. Eliane and Hassan had known each other briefly. There were rumors of arguments, hurt feelings, a rejection that Hassan could not accept. Whatever the truth, that morning he had come looking for her. When he saw her waiting with friends, he crossed the street. What happened next lasted seconds but felt eternal. As the bus approached, Hassan began shouting. Witnesses said his words were furious, broken, impossible to understand. Eliane stepped back, confused, trying to calm him down. Then, in front of her friends, her classmates, and strangers frozen in disbelief, he pulled the knife from his sleeve and lunged. One swift motion, one wound, straight to the chest. Eliane collapsed to the pavement, the light still green on the traffic signal above her. Her friends screamed for help, waving at cars that had stopped mid-lane. Passengers on the bus rushed out, trying to help her, pressing hands against the bleeding. Someone called for an ambulance. Another chased Hassan as he ran. But it was already too late. Eliane Ndam was pronounced dead minutes later. The scene became a symbol of heartbreak. A school uniform soaked in blood, flowers piling up by the bus stop, and a city asking how a child could do something so cruel. Police arrested Hassan less than an hour later, hiding nearby. He said nothing at first. When questioned, his voice was flat. He claimed he didn't mean to kill her, only to scare her. But CCTV footage told the truth. A deliberate attack, a moment of control, not chaos. As investigators pieced together his life, they found a pattern of anger and obsession. Messages on his phone revealed jealousy and fixation. He had told friends, "She thinks she can embarrass me, she'll see." He had bought the knife days earlier. He had waited for her at the same bus stop the day before, but never saw her. On that morning, he finally did. The killing shocked London. A murder in broad daylight, in front of children on their way to school. The country mourned not only Eliane, but what her death represented. The growing wave of teenage violence that seemed impossible to stop. In court, prosecutors described Hassan as cold, methodical, and self-absorbed. He showed little emotion during testimony. When the judge asked if he understood the charge of murder, he nodded once, staring at the floor. The CCTV footage was played for the court, though only briefly. Many jurors could not watch. The sound of screams, the sight of a young girl falling, and the motionless silence that followed. It was unbearable. Eliane's parents sat together in the courtroom every day. Her mother held a small silver cross in her hand, as the prosecution described the final moments of her daughter's life. When the verdict came, the room was silent. Hassan Sentamu was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years. He will be 40 before he is even eligible for release. For Eliane's family, there was no justice equal to their loss. After the sentencing, her father stood outside the courthouse. His voice broke as he spoke to reporters. "She was my little girl," he said. "She had dreams. He took them all away in seconds." The case reignited a national debate about knife crime and teenage anger in Britain. Politicians called for stricter laws, but in the end, no policy could explain why a 17-year-old would bring a knife to school in the first place. Hassan had not grown up in chaos. He was not poor, not desperate. He was simply angry, and he believed that anger gave him power. Inside prison, Hassan keeps to himself. Officers describe him as quiet, withdrawn, showing neither remorse nor defiance. He spends hours writing in notebooks, though he never shares what he writes. Perhaps they are apologies, perhaps they are excuses, perhaps they are nothing at all. For Londoners, the image of that morning still lingers. The school uniform, the flashing blue lights, the silence that followed the sirens. Eliane's classmates passed the memorial every day, laying flowers that never seemed to fade. One message written in pencil reads, "You were just trying to go to school." And that is what makes this story so haunting. Because Eliane Andam was doing nothing wrong, she was not in danger until someone decided she should be. And while Croydon struggled to comprehend the murder that unfolded in daylight, another town only months later would witness a horror even darker. Not one victim, but three. Not a knife drawn in anger, but a calculated rampage that turned a children's dance class into a massacre. Axel Rudakubana, Southport, United Kingdom, 2024. Some crimes freeze a nation in disbelief. Some make the world stop breathing for a moment. And then there are those that are so brutal, so senseless, that they leave scars that will never fade. In July of 2024, the small seaside town of Southport in northwest England woke to sirens, screams, and horror. What should have been an ordinary children's dance class became one of the darkest days in British history, a day when innocence itself was slaughtered. The killer was Axel Rudakubana, 17 years old, quiet, withdrawn, unremarkable to most who knew him. He had attended local schools, played video games, and lived with his mother in a modest home. There was nothing about him that suggested the monster he would become. The class that morning was being held at the Inspire Dance Studio, a bright building filled with music and laughter. Inside, young girls, some as young as 6, practiced their routines while parents waited outside. The air smelled of floor polish and perfume, and for a brief time, everything felt safe. At 10:15 a.m., Axel entered the building through the side door. He was carrying 2 large kitchen knives hidden under his jacket. He walked past the front desk without a word, his face blank. Witnesses later said his eyes looked empty, like there was nobody home. Inside the dance hall, the music stopped when he appeared. Children froze. In a flash, he began to swing the knives. Screams filled the room as he attacked anyone within reach. Teachers tried to shield the children, but he moved fast, methodical, focused, unstoppable. When it was over, 3 little girls were dead. Their names were Alice, age 9, Darcy, aged 8, and Betsy, age 6. 8 more people were injured, including 2 parents who tried to fight him off. The floor was covered in ribbons and blood. Police arrived within minutes. They found Axel still inside, standing motionless in the middle of the room. He dropped the knives when ordered, but said nothing. When asked why he did it, he whispered, "Because I wanted to." Those 4 words would haunt the country for months. Investigators searched his home and computer. What they found painted the picture of a teenager spiraling into darkness. He had spent months researching mass killings, knife attacks, and crime documentaries. He watched videos of violence for hours every night. In his notes, detectives found lists, names of local schools, potential targets, and one chilling line: "If I can't feel normal, I'll make everyone feel my pain." There was no manifesto, no ideology, no clear reason. Only rage, loneliness, and obsession. Experts later said he exhibited signs of psychopathy, a complete lack of empathy combined with a fascination for control. He wanted to see fear. He wanted to decide who lived and who died. The media called him the Southport Butcher. For weeks, his face filled every headline. But what stood out most was how ordinary he seemed. A quiet boy with average grades, no history of violence, and no warning signs strong enough to predict this level of evil. In court, he refused to speak. He sat expressionless as the prosecution read the names of his victims, their ages, and the details of his attack. When the photos of the children were shown, even the judge paused. Reporters described the courtroom as colder than a grave. The verdict came swiftly. Axel Rudakubana was found guilty of 3 counts of murder and multiple counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 52 years before he could ever apply for release. He was 17 at the time of the murders. He will be nearly 70 before he is free. Families of the victims stood together as the sentence was read. Some cried, others stared at him in silence. One father shouted, "You took everything." Axel never looked up. He simply turned, hands cuffed, and walked out of the courtroom. Psychologists later said that what made Axel's crime so terrifying was not just the brutality, it was the calm. He was not enraged. He was detached. He killed without emotion, and that absence of feeling is what defines true evil. Southport has tried to heal, but the memory remains. The dance studio has been rebuilt and renamed. Every year, a recital is held in memory of the three girls, their favorite songs filling the hall once again. Parents cry quietly in the back as tiny dancers twirl across the same floor where the nightmare began. There is beauty again, but it is different now. Fragile, knowing. Police officers who first entered the studio that day still attend therapy. Some said it was the worst scene they had ever witnessed. One officer described finding a child's ballet shoe beside one of the knives. He said it was the moment he realized he would never forget. Axel Rudakubana's name is rarely spoken in Southport. People refer to him only as that boy. They do not want him remembered, only erased, but his story endures as a warning. Proof that evil does not always roar before it strikes. Sometimes, it walks quietly through the door, carrying knives and silence. And while Britain was still reeling from the horror inside a dance studio, across the ocean in Mississippi, another teenager would commit a killing, closer to home. A 14-year-old girl, angry and cold, would take her mother's life, not with planning or obsession, but with betrayal. Carly Madison, Gregg, Mississippi, United States, 2024. Evil does not always arrive from the shadows. Sometimes it grows quietly in the room next door. Sometimes it calls you Mom. In the spring of 2024, the town of Greenville, Mississippi, was shaken by a story that sounded impossible. A 14-year-old girl, Carly Madison Gregg, had confessed to killing her own mother, Melissa Gregg. The crime was not just shocking for its brutality, but for how ordinary the hours before it had seemed. Melissa Gregg was known in her neighborhood as kind and patient. She worked long hours and raised Carly alone after her father left when she was still a child. Their life was simple: modest home, regular church attendance, Sunday dinners with relatives. To anyone looking in, it was a family surviving quietly. But behind closed doors, something was unraveling. Neighbors said they often heard arguments. Melissa wanted structure, school, chores, discipline. Carly wanted freedom, friends, and the online life her mother disapproved of. Their fights grew louder, their distance colder. Police would later learn that Carly had threatened to run away more than once. No one ever believed she would do worse. On March 15th, at just after 7 p.m., police were called to the Gregg residence. A neighbor had seen smoke coming from the kitchen and called for help. When officers entered, they found Melissa Gregg on the floor, unresponsive. She had been stabbed multiple times. The knife was still in the sink, washed, but not clean. In the corner of the living room sat Carly, her clothes stained, her eyes empty. She said only one thing when the officer asked what happened. "I did it." Her voice was calm, almost relieved. At first, detectives thought she was in shock, but as they questioned her, the truth became clear. Carly had planned the killing for days. Security footage from a local store showed her purchasing the knife herself, using cash she stole from her mother's purse. She waited until Melissa was home alone, cooking dinner. There was an argument, as there always was. Then Carly snapped. In her confession, she described it without emotion. She wouldn't stop yelling. "I just wanted it to end." Afterward, she washed the knife, changed her clothes, and called a friend, not the police. She told the friend, "It's done." That message, later recovered from her phone, became one of the most chilling pieces of evidence in the case. When investigators searched her room, they found a journal. Inside were drawings and fragments of thoughts that revealed a disturbing mindset. One entry read, "I don't feel anything anymore. Maybe that's what's wrong with me." Another said, "I wonder what peace feels like." Experts who analyzed her writings said they showed signs of deep emotional detachment, a child who had learned to mimic normal feelings but no longer felt them. One psychologist called her a mirror with nothing behind it. Carly's trial drew nationwide attention, not just because of her age, but because of her composure. In court, she sat quietly, her expression flat. When asked why she killed her mother, she answered simply, "We didn't get along." She never cried, she never apologized. Even when shown photos of the scene, her eyes remained dry. The prosecution presented the case as a cold, deliberate act of patricide, the calculated killing of a parent by a child. They emphasized the planning, the cleanup, the call afterward. This was not a crime of passion, it was a decision. Her defense argued that Carly was mentally unwell, that years of emotional neglect had built into an uncontrollable breakdown. But the evidence painted a different story. Every action was controlled, every step measured, every choice her own. In September of 2024, the verdict came, guilty of murder. Because of her age, Carly was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years. She will be in her 40s before she can ever breathe free air again. Melissa Gregg's family refused to attend the sentencing. They said they had already lost two people, Melissa to death and Carly to her own darkness. Her aunt later said, "We keep asking why, but there is no answer that makes sense." Inside prison, Carly is treated as both a curiosity and a cautionary tale. In therapy sessions, she rarely speaks. Other inmates call her the quiet one. She spends her days reading and sketching, the same activities her mother once encouraged, but now they serve only as reminders of what she destroyed. Journalists who covered the case said the most haunting part was not the crime itself, but Carly's calmness, no remorse, no panic. Just a girl who decided to kill and did it, without hesitation, without emotion. The Greenville police chief later said, "I've seen men twice her age commit murder and break down crying. She never blinked. That's what stays with me." In the months after the killing, the Gregg house was sold. The new owners repainted the walls, removed the kitchen tiles, and tried to erase what happened there. But people still walk by slower when they pass it. The memory remains, a reminder that sometimes evil doesn't arrive with warning. Sometimes it grows quietly inside the people we love. There are names that fade with time, and names that stain it forever. From Paris Bennett to Carly Madison Gregg, each story in this series proves that evil is not bound by age, gender, or circumstance. Sometimes it hides behind teenage laughter, sometimes behind heartbreak, and sometimes behind blood ties. If there's anything to take from these stories, it's that monsters aren't always born in darkness. Sometimes they're raised in daylight. So stay aware, stay safe, and never forget that even the smallest cracks in the human heart can open to something vast and unthinkable. And if you want to explore more stories that reveal what humanity tries to hide, subscribe, because the next story might be closer than you think.